growing up, I always wanted to be like one of the smart kids. You know what I'm talking about. The ones that always sat in front of class, always had their hands up, and someone managed to finish homework even before it was set. But I could only dream about that. It only existed in my frail little head. Instead, I was that kid who was always clueless in class. I failed every test, and was more familiar with detentions than distinctions. It was so bad that it got to a point I actually started to believe that some people were just born smart, you know? That maybe they were given a secret code at birth that the rest of us never got. I used to think that grades came from some magical revision method, or that the parents gave them some kind of A-star milk when the babies or something. Meanwhile, the rest of us were born with, well, yeah, you get the gist. But then it hit me. There I was, a month before exams, staring at my predicted grades like they were a death sentence. All I could see was a U, and a U. And for the first time, it actually clicked. I'd wasted all this time in my life doing it wrong, and no one's coming to save me now. I had big dreams about being a doctor or an engineer, but all of them were trapped behind these 2-hour timed exams. It felt like I was in this tiny room, and the walls were closing in. Everywhere I looked, the pressure, the expectation, the ticking clock. It was like the air around me was thinning. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, but I knew I had to move. So I did the only thing I could think of, desperately searching for answers everywhere. YouTube videos, Reddit threads, friends, teachers, even students from the year above. I didn't want to just do better anymore, I had to survive. And in that chaos, I stumbled across something that changed everything. So yeah, long story short, I wrote these exams, I passed with flying colours, I got all A stars. I then went on to my first choice sixth form, which is another story for another day, by the way. Anyway, I passed those sixth form subjects I chose, then I got into my first choice university. Now I do engineering at my first choice university. So yeah, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what I did, exactly how I did it, so that you can move from all U's to A stars in just a couple of months, just like I did. So yeah, let's get straight into the video. Now, pointer number 1, stop trying to study everything. Now, before I knew anything about studying, I was like most people. I used to think that the more things you studied equal to the more things you know. But while in theory, this sounds, for the most part, correct, it's not necessarily the case. And when I finally realized that I was trying to memorize everything, which is not a very smart thing to do, by the way, I actually realized that it was slowing me down in my studies, because the average GCSE or sixth form or A-level or anything, like any textbook like that, it's at 300 pages. And let's be honest with ourselves, no one is actually memorizing every single line of that. So instead, I shifted my mindset from trying to study every single thing in the textbook to actually studying what mattered the most. So I started going through past paper questions like my life depended on it, because let's be real, it depended on it. And I noticed something mad. So basically, like, I noticed that the same questions kept coming up over and over and over and over again, and like not word for word all the time, but like they were basically asking the same thing, like the same topics, the same structure, the same tricks, the same, like, you know, the same things pretty much. So yeah, I made a list of like these topics that kept repeating year after year, and I made sure that I could answer them with my eyes closed. And this time around, I wasn't, you know, memorizing random lines from the textbooks or anything. I was just basically learning things that I knew were 100% certain were gonna come. Because if a question has appeared in the past paper questions at least 3 years in the past, there's like, it's most likely that it's gonna come in the next year. So yeah, the exam board probably wants you to know it. Now, tip number 2, active recall or blurting, aka the real memory hack. Now, we all knew that one person in school with those rainbow colored notes. Every time you looked over your shoulder, it looked less like they're revising and more like they're preparing for an act exhibition. And yeah, I used to think that that's what like a real smart student looks like. But here's the thing, I found out that there's real science behind what works and what doesn't for students. And trust me, highlighting your notes is not one of them. A study from 2013 found out that highlighting and rereading the notes are 2 of the least effective way of studying, but yet those are the ones we're drifted to because they feel safe. But there's a saying that hit me hard: if you highlight everything, you highlight nothing. And that's when I knew that I needed to drop the highlighters and then study like I truly meant it. So I changed the coloring pen for something called active recall, and trust me, it completely changed the game for me. So here's how it works. Grab a blank piece of paper, choose a topic you've just studied. Now, without looking at your notes, write everything you remember. Then go back, check what you got right and fill in what you missed. That process is called blurting, and trust me, it can be painful sometimes. Because sometimes you stare at a blank page thinking, I swear I've just revised this. But that pain, that's when the actual learning happens.
You're training your brain to put information out, not just push it in. At first it's humbling, you realize how much you don't know. But week by week, your brain adapts, your recall gets faster, your memory locks in tighter. And the best part, you start believing in your ability to remember.
And the confidence, that's what separates an average student from an A-star student. Now, point number 3, study less more often, aka stop the all-nighters. Now, when I was younger, I used to think that grinding for 6 hours at a time meant that I was putting in the work. And part of that came from my upbringing. My parents, like many others, would tell me that
if you want top grades, you've got to put in more hours. So I did. I'd sit there, eyes burning, flipping through pages for hours, but nothing stuck. I wasn't learning, I was drowning.
And what made it worse was that I'd put in all those hours and then I'll still end up getting less than someone who barely revised or didn't even revise at all. It was humbling. It got to a point that I even started to pretend that I didn't study just so that I'd have an excuse when I failed my exams, because I could admit that I gave it all my all and I still failed. That's when I stumbled upon a method that changed my whole mentality. It's called spaced repetition. It's a learning technique backed by cognitive science, and it works like this. Instead of cramming everything in one go, you space out your revision over time and revisit the same material just before your brain is about to forget it. This reinforces the information right when it's about to fade. And that's what makes it stick long term. One study from 2006 found out that students who used spaced repetition outperformed those who crammed, even when both groups spent the same amount of time studying. So it's not about studying more, it's about doing it smarter. So here's what I personally did. I did 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the evening. That's it. But in that period of time, I made sure that there were no distractions, no phones. That means no scrolling, there's nothing around me, just me, my brain, my book, 100% focus. And because I kept up showing up daily, that knowledge stacked up. It wasn't just floating in my brain. It was being filed away properly like folders in a cabinet. So trust me, stop forcing 5-hour cram marathons and hoping for a miracle. Instead, study smart and stay consistent. Let time and science work in your favor and your grades will show it. Now, if someone like me who literally thought couldn't make it could turn it around, there's no reason why you can't too. This video was just the introduction. Over the next few episodes, I'll be breaking down
how I revised these subjects specifically, the exact apps and tools I used to save time and stay focused, my timetable that actually worked, and the weird tricks I used to stop procrastinating.
So if your GCSEs or A-level or anything like that is coming up and you want to boost your grades, then you should definitely follow this series. You can do this by liking or subscribing to the video. And yeah, I'll see you next video. Peace.